launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
Space Monkeys, blasting off with Nicholas Douzinas. He is the co-founder of Ajuna Network. Nicholas, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You guys are building Ajuna, and Ajuna is a gaming-focused blockchain. Your parachain on both Kusama and on Polkadot. You guys just recently got your slot.
Yep.
There's a lot of gaming plays in the ecosystem. We have people building kind of rudimentary games on top of the Remark standard. Mm-hmm. We have like big community plays like the Moonsama guys. Where do you fit into the landscape of blockchain gaming?
Okay. So I think for us, one of the big things that we wanted to focus on is that you saw how last year, essentially this NFT market went into this multi-billion-dollar industry. But when you look at it from the perspective, let's say, of gaming, NFTs are nothing more than in-game items or in-game assets.
Right.
A good example is, I don't know if you've seen the movie Ready Player One.
Yep.
So in that movie, there's this thing called the Holy Grenade, which is obviously just a very expensive NFT. But for this NFT to have really any value, unless that persistent world exists, there's no value to it. And the other problem is that with specifically with games, if there's anytime a single entity, let's say, that is controlling that environment, anytime they choose to just put down the server, again, your sort of in-game item or NFT would be worthless. So what we're trying to do is sort of see how we can put game logic or game engines to reside on chain. Now, that doesn't mean that everything needs to be on chain, but if we want to talk about player governance, you have to have the logic on chain.
Okay.
So that's where sort of most of our focus is on right now.
Okay, so let's talk about some aspects of gaming that won't be on chain or aren't on chain yet. What would these be? So
currently there's a couple of let's say big infrastructure problems that would not match very well with the gaming is right now. Latency is one of the bigger issues sort of that we have.
Sure.
In general, blockchains are quite slow, which means that if you want really fast interactions, it's not a good sort of environment to be. So when you're thinking about massive multiplayer games or shooters like Call of Duty, where you need that sort of instant real-time communication, right now it will not work.
Okay.
But when you think about, let's say, turn-based games, where you don't require really that fast interactions, then the blockchain is pretty perfectly suited to be able to support even fully on-chain a game like that. So Hearthstone type of games would be a very good fit right now for blockchain.
Okay, and so what sort of games are you guys looking to host right now?
So for us, let's say there's two paths. There's the games that we see this, that it's going to be an evolutionary process, which means that for the game industry to transition to this new way of thinking about designing games, first usually it's just porting things. So something that worked in Web 2, let's figure out if we can make it work in Web 3.
With a sustained item economy. And all
so
these
maybe
aspects.
like an NFT layer, just sort of something very simple like that.
Right.
So it's going to be these hybrid models in the beginning, more experimental. So obviously we're going to support that because we think that's sort of the easier transition. But eventually we are right now focused more towards turn-based games, where sort of latency is not that big of an issue. So we can start putting more components outside of that NFT layer on chain. So I was saying the game engine or aspects of the game engine and game logic.
Okay, and this infrastructure is already built out on Ajuna, or is this something that you guys are working towards?
It's working towards. I mean, it's always working towards. Currently, where we are, we're in the state, and sort of that's where why we're here at Sub0 to show essentially our Unity integration into Substrate and how we can sort of the advantage of working with palettes in order to create a much more developer-friendly environment, at least for the gaming industry. Part of our evolution goes with Polkadot's evolution, right? Sort of the end goal of relay chains and us, let's say, as a parachain, being able to provide, let's say, for a game studio, their own specific parachain, let's say, which comes out for Ajuna specifically for gaming, is the end goal. We're quite away from that, I think. And it's not only dependent on us, it's dependent sort of on the whole ecosystem building out that initial vision.
Right. And I heard you talking about like a layer 2. Oh, what can you tell us about this?
That's the interesting sort of, or the fun part for it, because maybe just to take a back step of why we are on Polkadot, because we started out just trying to build a game, right? A few years ago, back in 2016, 17.
You just wanted to build a game?
We just wanted to build a game. And,
okay.
So my co-founder, Cedric, which I encourage you to talk with him, brilliant. He started back in 2013, 2014, first sort of mining Bitcoin, getting into that sort of aspect of it. And he always had sort of this passion for gaming. So actually the first game he tried to build was on the Bitcoin protocol. So what he did is he took the Satoshi part of the transaction to encode logic in order to create just a simple lottery. Now, obviously, we're in Switzerland, not very legal sort of to do that, which he found out later, so he dropped it.
Okay.
But already he had got that sort of that passion of, okay, there's something here that I need to like. I can put sort of some game logic onto a chain and create a game.
Yeah.
So it was a few years later, now this is about 2017, 18. And we had this first concept of a game which was called back then World of Mogwai, so a turn-based game inspired by Hearthstone, let's say. Mm-hmm. And at that point, Cedric took Dash, which was quite an interesting protocol back then. What we liked about it is that they had this idea of master nodes, and their governance was an interesting theory. As a blockchain, it was really bad for gaming. 2-minute blocks, which means the user experience was pretty horrible. And it was about 1.5 years ago, that Cedric stumbled upon Substrate, and that started unlocking all of these problems that we were facing.
Right.
In order to run your own blockchain, which was a disaster, right? 51 attacks, all of these things, and suddenly instead of focusing on your game, you're just trying to keep an infrastructure. So I think that Substrate and Polkadot gave us that layer, which we don't have to care about trust and security, and we can just build upon.
Yeah, okay.
So layer 2, what we wanted to achieve is how can we get that latency to a point where games can be fluid, so you can have a really good user experience.
Sure.
But the risk there is privacy, because it might not sound or seem like a very important thing in gaming, but privacy is really important. Let's give an example. If you and I are playing poker, if I can see your cards, it's not going to be a very good game.
Yes. We just had Kenny on, and he used the exact same example.
Okay,
right?
perfect.
You can't see your player's hand or their next move.
Because, I mean, yes, there's hash and reveal, but it's not a really good sort of way of going about it. Now, in our layer 2, what we started using is trusted execution environments. So this is something that resides essentially in the Intel Xeon chipset, or you can find it also on an AMD. So it's a hardware, let's say, solution.
Yep.
And in that enclave that is created, you get a latency of about 250 to 300 milliseconds. So that means about 3 to 4 interactions per second. From a user experience, it's perfect for a certain type of games. And because of the way that this is constructed, you can maintain the privacy and sort of be able to, in a way, make sure that the game is always going to be fair.
Fantastic.
Which is super interesting.
Yeah.
So
that's just the level of privacy you can use the TEEs for, right?
Yes.
Are you guys using another protocol like Integrity or anything, or are you building your own?
No, again, I think that's one of the big advantages of the ecosystem.
That's right.
We don't have to go out and build everything. I don't have to build the T's. I don't have to necessarily build my own wallet. As long as other people in the ecosystem are building these things out, it's just there for us to sort of utilize. So we currently are working with Integrity. We're also working with a few partners which are outside of the ecosystem. One super interesting project that we've started is with a company called Polycrypt, which is based out of Germany. Again, they're sort of really focused on the trusted execution environments. And currently we're working on essentially an NFT, let's say, marketplace, which is going to be completely real time in terms of interactions, super fast, and zero gas fees. So that would mean that we were trying to build out something which would compete one-to-one in terms of performance, let's say with something like Immutable, which we think would be a really great achievement for the ecosystem.
So layer 1, you're managing assets.
Yes.
Layer 2, you're leveraging T's to
logic. So
create private fast logic.
Exactly. The point is that on our layer 2 is where we want to be able to put aspects of the game logic of the game, because that's where you need the fast interactions, right?
Yeah.
You can't wait 12 seconds to go back to the layer 1, and I have to wait 12 seconds until you play your turn.
Exit the game.
I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm done.
Of course.
Or the solutions that you would have to find as a game developer are not really good. You would have to start adding animations. You'd have to start adding sort of weird transitions.
Just to wait.
To waste
time.
Oh
my God! Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So let's talk about NFTs. Lots of standards to choose from.
Yeah.
How are you guys going about choosing how you represent assets in these games?
So right now we're just focused on the step before that,
Okay.
which is that in our world or in the gaming world, it's an in-game item. So it's and one of the big differences of in-game items or characters inside a game is that they evolve constantly. They upgrade, they get more power, they get different items, they get different swords. So it has to be able to change. So our first product that we're getting out to the market is called the Awesome Ajuna avatars. You can think about it as an NFT collectible game.
Okay.
A bit like the experience that you get, with the Panini stickers, or World Cup stickers that you
Sure.
you
Sure.
collect.
Okay.
And the whole idea is that you can open your packs, get your different, let's say, cards,
Yeah.
start forging them in order to grow them and get, let's say, your legendary card.
Cool.
But these remain to be in-game items. So all of this game that you're going through, it's still not an NFT.
Yeah.
Because again, we want to just attract gamers. An NFT is interesting for a gamer, in our opinion at least, only the moment that he decides that I want to exit the game environment, right? So I'm playing in my game, I have my characters, I have my items. The minute that I want to take them outside, then essentially you take that snapshot, or you tokenize those assets into an NFT, and then it's all about access. So offboarding is equally as important. So it's
That's interesting.
we're making sure that we can offboard within our ecosystem, but it's equally important for us to be able to offboard on Ethereum, OpenSea, and
Sure.
where at least the market has the volumes for people to be able to buy and sell these items.
Okay, so maybe you're thinking about playing in the Ethereum standards a little bit more.
Not necessarily.
No?
I mean, for us, it's about choice. So we should be able.
Yeah.
The end goal should be that wherever you want to take it, you should take it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's steps. Number one for us is ecosystem, right? Make sure that we can offboard anywhere within the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Work within the ecosystem. Second step for us is essentially, I would say, Polygon or Ethereum. That's the second ecosystem that we're going to make sure that can be easy to offboard items or NFTs there.
If the in-game item is not an NFT until you leave the game, how does the state of that item persist without a representation? Where is that stored, and can it be taken away?
Well, as long as you remain within the game environment,
Yeah.
right, is part of your account, whatever you've set up the account. If it's a game that's running on a centralized server, that's where it resides.
Okay.
If you have it on-chain, it resides there. But think about the minute that you take it out of the game, or you create an NFT, then that's your account or your avatar, whatever you want to call it in that game, freezes.
Okay.
But you can't really use it because you've created that snapshot. You take it out
Out of the game, yeah. Okay.
and let's say then I actually sell it. So I sell you buy it. It's still nothing that you can use. It's just an NFT. But then you should have the opportunity to take it, and then put it back into the game.
Yeah.
At which time it decouples, let's say, from an NFT, and then it's a fully fungible asset, which will keep evolving, playing, move in and out.
Yeah, that's interesting. What I like about this concept is that people can play the games without the difficult onboarding experience into Web3. And if they want to take advantage of being able to sell or trade their items, they can go through that process at that point, right?
I agree. And I think, we have a different outlook on the use of NFTs, at least for gaming in the beginning. It seems that up to now, what NFTs were successful in gaming for was fundraising. It was a mechanism in order to be able to raise funds to develop your game,
Yeah.
which is great. But for us, we're trying to use NFTs more as a community building mechanism. So
Sure.
how we can use that as a product, let's say, for game developers to create that first community, which
Yeah.
will then go and test their games. So it's not about fundraising, let's say, so much. It's more about that community building aspect of it. Maybe just to finish that, where we
sure.
see NFTs for gamers having value, think about your experience when you're playing a game, right? You go into a new game, you probably know nothing, which means that I don't care about the characters, the items, they don't mean anything to me. World of Warcraft was actually a great example back in the day. People went into it blind, it looked like an awesome game, and eventually they started feeling, let's say, connected to their character or the items that they were buying. For them, it had value. You can put a monetary value to it if you want, but it doesn't matter. That I felt that this is important for me. What that led them to was that then discovered, there's actually a marketplace inside, but there's also an illegal marketplace that I can go and sell my character because people find value to it. So the problem that we see with the process right now with NFTs is that for me to care about it, I need to care about, again, the world that sort of persists this game. So the way that we would like to go about it is that first create the game, push the game out, create that community, and once that community cares about whether those are the items, the characters inside, if at that point you serve them that, by the way, you own this, and this gives you this and this opportunity, whether that's to sell it or do whatever, then they will care, and they will try to figure out, what is this Web3? What are these tokens?
Yes.
No, it's a bit like back in the day when somebody told us, hey, do you know that you can listen music on MP3s? What the hell does that mean?
Sure.
As a procedure back then, it was like super simple. You need to download this, install that, 10 different steps, and then maybe, after 20 minutes you can download one song, and if it's not, something corrupt, you can play it.
Or evil.
Or, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much the same thing as saying to people today, hey, have you heard about, Web3 and blockchain?
Yeah.
Super simple. These 10 steps. So we just need to simplify that, I think.
NFTs don't have the greatest name across the gaming world, right?
No.
Plenty of FUD, some of it even perpetuated by the gaming studios themselves. Where do you think that comes from, and how is it overcome?
I think it's a communications problem which is generally in the blockchain. We have this tendency of sort of throwing out the wrong messages to people that know nothing about this technology.
Right.
We're throwing out a message which is NFT, which means nothing to a gamer. A non-fungible token means absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And then what they see is, let's say, pictures of monkeys selling for ridiculous amounts of money.
Right.
And it just all looks like, whether you want to call it a scam or something. So gamers, which are quite protective of their environment
and their communities,
and they're equally as toxic as the crypto community.
Sure.
So they're like, no, I want nothing of this, because we're just selling the end result. You own this and you can sell it, and we're forgetting about the basic question, which is they need to care. If they care, then it has value, and if it has value for them, then they can go out to the markets and trade.
Okay. Well, this is all very cool, and this kind of infrastructure, this backbone to gaming that you're building, sounds fantastic. You guys are doing this card game that you said, but what about onboarding other game developers and game studios? How's that coming, and what sort of challenges are you facing in that regard?
So I think that's probably the biggest challenge, not only for gaming, or for Polkadot specifically. I would say the whole industry is how to be onboard current businesses onto Web3. And it needs to be easy. It needs to be sort of simple things, experimental things in the beginning. So for us, we see the game industry, let's say, in two big buckets. The people who are already experimenting in the space, in the blockchain space, and the people who are still sort of on the fence looking in. As a relatively new project for us, our biggest success is going to be with indie studios, right? Because there they can get our full attention. We can have a team that can sort of support them for all of these at least the blockchain side of things that they will need. So we start with indie studios who are already positively, let's say, looking towards Web3. Because I don't want to be going into a meeting trying to convince people about, blockchain is, the savior, and then tell them why it's me. So it's a double fight I don't want to take. So now for us in the beginning, it's about really focusing on those smaller games. We need small things. We don't need massive AAA titles. Those will come later on when it makes sense. And for bigger studios, for us, it's always just making this early introduction. So, hello, we're here, we're building. And already there's quite a few bigger studios which are very positive towards the space, whether that's Ubisoft, which is one of the biggest sort of publishers, who are experimenting, and they get a lot of shit for it. When they released an NFT project a few months ago, nobody touched it, and they had the whole gaming community just piling on them. But good for them, they did it, right? You have to experiment. So it starts with indie studios, and eventually you hope that sort of those bigger franchises are going to sort of start entering the space.
That's cool. And do you have any interest in maybe smaller mobile games and instances like that?
The way that the gaming industry is evolving, it has a couple of facts which are pretty interesting. One is that the gaming industry currently, in terms of size, is bigger than both the movie and the music industry combined. So it shows the dynamic of this sort of industry, and it's going to keep growing. And it's because it's always going to be the most interactive medium for, let's say, user experiences. Because mobile games is the easiest sort of production cost is pretty low for mobile games compared to trying to make a PlayStation game, which might cost 10, 20, 30, 50 million just to create one game. So you need those small casual games where people can have a short experience that works for them, and then you can start sort of moving towards the bigger, let's say, experiences and titles.
Okay, awesome. Now, you guys secured a ton of block space with your parachain on Kusama and then your one on Polkadot. How are you going to fill these two different types of block space over the next few years? How are you going to manage these two chains?
So that was one of the things, and I've seen. I still think it's a problem for the ecosystem, right? Because it sounds like a good idea. Ooh, I have my test network, which has its own token, but launching a token on its own is a massive sort of undertaking.
Yes.
And then there's Polkadot, which is, let's say, the more mature network. Now, for us, it always makes sense because we were always thinking of what's the game development process. And usually the way that it goes is that there's the majority of the time is spent internally within a team building, close tests.
Yeah.
And eventually you go out to do your first, let's say, public test or your beta test. For us, that's Kusama. That's what it was built for. It was built for people to go in, break stuff.
Right.
Even if your game crashes, it's fine.
And you want to test the economy.
And you want to test everything from the economy to the gameplay to anything that you want to sort of introduce.
Right.
So that's how we always saw Kusama as sort of the natural fit for the test environment for games to get in.
Yeah.
And then, let's say once you graduate towards, I have my game, I'm happy, I've done my testing, I'm confident in what I want to launch, then you can go on Polkadot, on sort of our Polkadot chain and launch there. There's things that we need to solve also there, because if you launch on Kusama your beta and you have your own token, then how does that move on to the next one?
Right.
So different ways that you can approach that, but we'll get there when it's the time. But that's the idea of the two networks.
Okay, gotcha. So when you do get there, the infrastructure's running, you don't need to pay attention so much anymore. You have time to build your own game. What does this game look like? What's the dream game?
For
unlimited resources?
Nicholas,
unlimited team.
So for Nicholas, it's always a multiplayer game.
Yep.
Because I think one of the personal experiences that I went through during COVID was, I remember when sort of COVID hit. I live in Switzerland with my wife and I have 2 kids. So during that lockdown period, I think within a month, me and my wife we finished Netflix. I thought is there a Netflix too? Because I've gone through everything. But I hated it because I felt numb, that I wasn't interacting with anyone. I just picked up gaming again. And I just naturally went towards games that are multiplayer, which give me the opportunity to interact with other people.
Yeah.
And suddenly, I just didn't feel alone, locked, locked down in my house.
Yeah.
So I would always go for a multiplayer experience, which is real time. I like shooters. Because
cool.
I like sort of that competitive aspect of it.
Nice.
I may be 40 plus years old, but it's kind of fun getting on a game and getting shit talked by an 18-year-old talking about anything, my mom, whatever.
Okay, so we need live.
We need live chat. We need live audio. We need fun interactions because it's escapism. And it should stay within that boundary, and it's fine to be that.
What planet would you host on?
It would be Earth, but we would be invaded somehow.
Okay.
I don't know how or what, but we would there would be a lot of those things going on.
Well, that's an important mission, man. Stop the invaders, right? Exactly. That's a classic one. Well, exactly. Nicholas, dude, thank you very much for coming on and sharing this story with us. And very excited to see what sort of games and adventures pop up on your chain.
Hey, absolutely. We'll make sure to share with you in the community when we launch our first games. And looking forward to generally not only our community, but the Polkadot ecosystem. Go in there, play the games, give us some feedback. It's the only way that we can sort of move forward.
Okay, I'll shit talk you on a shooter soon. So
hey, I love it.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one.